What did you do for an audition for this show? Were you asked to do something special, or did you just get a copy of the script, or what did you do?
We were given, well, I know for me, I was planning, we had to do Heywood's monologue.
All of you.
Now, everybody had to do Heywood's monologue. Yeah.
Oh, wow, wow. And what were you told? Were you told anything, or you just were given a cold, or?
I think we were given the script to read and gave us the side of Heywood's monologue. So for me, the first thing I was like, this is just strange. I like it. This is weird. And yeah. So.
Did all of you know about the Scottsboro boys and their trial?
Mm-hmm.
Some did, some did. Yeah. What surprised you most about that story when you finally sort of looked at the history of it? Was there something that kind of really stuck with you when you read it?
The fact that it actually, it was surprising, but it wasn't. It was surprising that a story like that could occur, but it wasn't surprising because, yes. And it was surprising. The main thing that was surprising to me is that it was still relevant, sadly, what things that happen today. And it always surprises me when people talk about like what's going on now, and people say that it's such an increase in crime against and all these things. Like, no, this has been going on for decades, but now technology has just caught up enough so that we can expose the demons for what they are. But before this isn't anything good. Like, it's not. It is the cross that we've always borne with grace, but always borne.
I would ask a question that might be a little sort of difficult. But you have a white director, and you're an all-black ensemble. And
We have
I'm
a white
wondering-
design team.
Oh, that's
The
They're
the entire design team.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of black inside.
So that's
I'm the other oppressed. I know.
But I'm wondering if that raised any eyebrows, and if there were things that maybe you told Michael that helped.
I think the reason that it worked so well is, as a director, he allowed us to be us and experiment, and was very open to it. It was kind of, I don't know how to say, like, he let us be black. Like, some of the stuff just happened, or he let us be black. He didn't tell us how to be black. Right. He was like, be black. And it worked because he allowed us to be who we are. And it just, everything happened organically.
And now, is that all in the script, or is there? I mean, the script is not written by a black writer either. So, is that in the script, or did you bring something else to it?
I think for me, what I appreciated most with Mike's direction is we would have conversations about race in the U.S., but we would have it as an ensemble, and sometimes he would step out of it and allow us to talk about our experiences. But a lot of the sidebar commentary just came naturally over the fact that we became very close over a 2-month rehearsal period, and started to identify how the characters actually did interact in real life with one another and what those relationships were like. So some like or no and all stuff, those things kind of just came organically from us playing together, and Mike giving us the freedom to play, and also telling us when we needed to reel it in when we got too far. You know.
Now, a 2-month rehearsal period, I think people in the audience might be surprised, is very unusual in this business. It's usually 3, maybe 4 weeks, and that's considered luxury, and that's sometimes just for a musical. So, what did that 2 months let you do? What happened in that 2 months?
It allowed us to fail, because a lot of times you're so focused on the end product, and so it's like, no, we have to do this, we have to get this done, we have to learn this, we have to do this, because we have a deadline to make, we have an opening to make. But for this, there wasn't that, at least for me, I never felt that pressure, because a lot of times you do, especially with a lot of non-equity shows, you do feel that pressure of, we have a deadline to meet, we only have so much time because people have day jobs and all these things happen. But this one, it was like, so many times in the process, Mike was just like, okay, I think that's good for today. We're in a good place. We can go home early. Let's go. And we were all like, okay. But we had that flexibility to do that. We were able to do it because of the length of the rehearsal period. So it wasn't like because a lot of times, even in rehearsals with other shows, you kind of do reach a peak, or you reach a moment in the day where it's just like, okay, I can't, like, I'll give it all I've got. I can't squeeze any more out of this, but you still have like another hour and a half to go in rehearsal because you have an opening in a week and a half. It's just like, ugh.
And also, it gave us time to really peel back the layers upon layers of the story. Our first rehearsal, we did a read through and everything. But then there was a rehearsal where we literally just sat in the lobby and watched the documentary on the Scottsboro boys. As an ensemble, we watched it, we discussed it. Jacqueline Willis, who's our dramaturg, she did a whole website of all of these primary sources on the case, the court documents, interviews that they did with Victoria Price and Ruby. It gave us all of this wealth of knowledge for some, because I'm a teacher by day, so I teach this, so it was easier for me to kind of, but then people who didn't know about it, it was just like, wow. So having that time to do the historical background and then the dialects and then the math work and all of those kinds of things, it just I believe helped us. And of course be closer as an ensemble, like, you know.
And having all these disciplines come together, which is something that we're not known for, doing mass work, music, dance, magic, act. It really needed that extra time. And I think what people are saying, what Katrina's saying, is that it allowed the actors to sort of allow the story to ferment and age, so that it got deeper into their bones. And this was a cast that was absolutely amazing in their commitment to research. I mean, every day they were bringing information to me that I wasn't aware of, and I thought I'd done my research. So everybody was, I think, their heart was in it beyond just creating art. I mean, I think they felt like this is a story that was important to them.
You work with masks, which is an art of its own. And had any of you ever done that before? You had.
Yeah, tried in Comedia.
Oh, in Comedia. Okay, so what did you have to think about with the masks, and what did you learn about what a mask allows you to do and how you work with it and what you need to do to make it work?
Well, I have a funny story. My mask is a little different from everyone's. At first, I was cast last in this show, so I didn't get a proper fitting for my mask. So with my mask, I have thick African American lips. They had to cut off the lips so I could actually fit, and I could actually speak, and I had so much to speak as the lawyer. So one thing that I had to do was be aware that the comfortability of having, something to restrict your facial expressions, and then you have to move not just here. So what I normally would frown, I would have to put it in a point now. And because my lips are exposed, fully exposed, I will put the frown in my lip, or I will try to find some other nuances, which will also help with the text as well. And it was just very fun, because at first you forget that you're just standing there neutral, and you're just like, oh no, you have a mask on, you can't see my face, so now my facial expression has to be in my pinky toe. So it's very fun to explore the body and explore the text with a mask on your face.
And also for like the other three of us, when we were fitted, the other four of us actually, the top lip isn't ours. The top lip is actually part of the mask because that's how it was fitted. So that was a whole other obstacle because you're used to feeling your top lip, and then and sometimes you all have pretty full lips, and those masks are white masks, and so they have very thin lips, and so the way they're shaped, it kind of sits right in the middle of your top lip, so sometimes it gets caught, and you have to do little tricks to find out, because I know for me, a lot of times, especially with that big monologue, when I'm talking, it shifts, because it rides my lip, it keeps going on the top and the bottom, so I have to find little ways to put my head down and adjust my lips so that the mask comes back underneath. So it's those little technical things that also took a lot of work and a lot of practice.
But a lot of it was also just the exact position on stage and the movement of the body, which is so much different than naturalistic realistic acting where you can use subtlety of facial expression. And it was reminding actors you have to face out as much as you can and know that your mask is doing a lot of the work for you in certain ways. And it was amazing how quickly they gravitated.
The other thing about the masks, I mean, it's interesting, you know, when we say minstrelsy these days, we immediately think racism. And you were kind of doing a reverse racism. And I'm thinking about how you thought about that. You know, you were playing sort of upended minstrelsy.
We were around each other so much, I saw him suddenly shift. I was like, it was interesting for me because I'm playing the racist lawyer who literally was trying to really expose these guys and saying some horrible things about Jews and blacks and everything like that. And the interesting thing was when I first walked out in front of an audience and I stood there before I spoke and they laughed, I said, okay, they're giving me permission to go as far as this mask will allow me to go. And they are on this train with us when Andy's character says there's whites out there, he waves and they laugh. I'm like, okay, so we can do this. Cool. So I think it was part of it for me was the give and take with the audience as well as with these guys, everyone in these masks. I'm like, okay, I have to step my game up. Because Breon came in ready and Leibowitz had his thing down and they had, you know, that Victorian Ruby scene and Walter White with the, I'm like, okay, so you know, you have to bring it.
And I felt like it was necessary because
Yeah.
I know when talking with Mark Stein, he said previous versions they did it with makeup and they tried these other things, and even in the script it talks about makeup, and I can't see it that way. I can't it has to. I feel like it has to be masked just to showcase the absurdity of everything that was coming out of their mouths, and it just accents the exaggeration of what was going on. And it's like how can you do it any other way without I feel like masks were just necessary. I couldn't see it doing it with I would have felt weird as an actor doing it with just makeup because it doesn't take you there. It doesn't push it far enough.
What's interesting is that you could almost do this play with a much larger cast. You could cast white actors in the roles of the white parts and have that whole
But it would be
dynamic.
less effective.
I think so. Totally. Definitely.
I always find that question interesting because I don't see masking the same as blackface. And we also, Walter White is actually African American. We also wore a mask for him. I see it as an art form of masking. So I always find that question interesting to me personally. Sorry, that's all I'm saying.
No, but that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. Yeah.
Well, I can't add to that, but wearing the mask and playing the white characters, it actually helped me it encouraged me to do research on the white culture. As we open up with Act 2 with these songs, I'm like, yeah, these songs are familiar. I see them in my church. But the relevance in the white culture with We Shall Not Be Moved, a song that I grew up with knowing that black people sung the song in civil rights era. And it forced me to do the research to see why is this song important. The Holland Nagila song, why is that song important? So I believe it's very effective to make sure, even though it's absurd, we still have to find ways to make it human. And I don't believe makeup, it would just brought you to a different place that dehumanized these characters. Where Mark has done great work in the play of making even though the lawyers are absurd, he has found a way to place a heart in their speech. And I think the mask really helps out with that.
You know, the character who plays the guy from the NAACP, I mean, he is really ruthlessly satirized as well. And I'm wondering, have you heard any objections from people in the audience at all on that character?
I mean, I think that part of what that was I mean, I think about a lot of the mask work in the show is almost like Venice Beach, Boardwalk, sketch artists sort of taking like aspects of who you are and then expanding on that one or two characteristics in order to bring a deeper truth to life. So I guess when I think about Walter White as a character, one of the things that because I did find myself, I was Walter White on that. I did find myself sort of like pondering. I mean, he's interesting for a lot of different reasons. We talked about in the rehearsal process. He's actually by blood. I think he's like yes. So he's 25% African American, if you want to talk about it in a technical sense. So he had fairer skin and I guess more Caucasian features, lighter eyes, higher cheekbones, that type of thing. But was fiercely an advocate for the African American people and used his privilege that he was given through having those characteristics as a means for infiltrating a lot of these Caucasian organizations that were working to further marginalize and suppress, the movement of the African Americans. So he was a double agent in that way because his privilege allowed him access that other people didn't have. He had darker skin and more African American features. But I think that one of the things about it that was really interesting for me is that what I took away from those four men was this sort of idea, and I think we shed light on it at the very end of the show when we bring the masks out, but that sort of idea about how everyone had their own reason for wanting to use these young men to advance their various causes. And it, not to say that some of these hearts weren't in the right place, but to raise the question, I wonder why that is.
That's
And I
a
think,
big time thing.
yes, and I think that's a big part of it too. And that's Walter White ties in with these, because it was sort of like, I wonder why he's the fourth one in this sort of brigade. But I think that that's a part of why he was, because I think although his intentions were in the right place, he also wanted to use them as a means for shedding light on atrocities that were happening within the African American community as a member of the NAACP. So I think that that's the thing that sort of ties him in to these other men.
I think it's really interesting that, one of the big sort of hysteria show at the moment is Hamilton. And I'm wondering if any of you auditioned for that when you did. Yeah. Almost all of you. I'm curious, did you use something from the show for the audition, or were you given a set thing to do?
I was given a set thing.
Set things. I'm curious just how, because I've heard various reports about how the auditions went and all of that. What was the experience?
I had a fun experience. Hamilton casting agents out there. That was a great experience. But again, because I did do the research here, now it's easier for me to make sure I research American history, period. And it allowed me to really enjoy the culture of hip hop and also what I learned in musical theater. But I feel as if the process was the same as any other college. And I was blessed to get, have them contact me personally and give me material from the show to present. But it was the exact same. Only thing I could take from this show was to study and to know that America at this point was here, and the same part that you use here at this stage is the same part you bring in.
What role did you go for?
It was Mulligan / Mask,
Okay.
which I had to play a white guy and.
Right.
I just went to the general,
Yeah.
which was 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah. I think, but that's what I appreciate. It wasn't, that was never mentioned or talked about, the fact of being a multicultural cast and outside of the actual posting. But other than that, it wasn't like this was a focus of this. They didn't make you feel like, oh yeah, we need you because you're a black actor. It was never, it was just like, it was any other call. It was just any other call. It was the same as the Book of Mormon call. It was the same as Monami. It was the same. It wasn't treated like special. You know what I mean? But they rested on what you brought to the table, which was cool because you didn't, and because you had a whole nother element inside of your book that you can bring in for this musical. Because what other musical are you gonna go in and get to rap? So it was like that was. So it was that part was different. Yeah, they asked for bars. Like I did a mashup of like 2 different songs. Like I rapped it and sung it. So because I wanted them to, because you only give them certain bars, but I wanted them to know that
And
I
the whole
could rap
show
as
is not
well.
rap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't necessarily ask for a rap. So it's like we had to stand your ground and give it to them.
Ladies, did you go?
I did not. I did not.
No. You would have been, all 3 of you would have been perfect for Skylar Sisters. Because there are only 3 of you in this show. Where did the women? How did the women think about the whole thing? You're playing some pretty nasty women.
Yeah. So I struggled to find the humanity of Victoria because so many times throughout history, some white women have caused the deaths of, black men over a lie. And even after doing the research and seeing the fact that everyone knew she lied, like it wasn't a secret. Everybody knew she lied. Yet, these men are still in jail. Like it was, but then going back and really understanding her background. Her mother was a prostitute. Her grandmother was a prostitute. She was born into this environment where it was, I'm gonna get you before you get me. So that brought humanity. Now, still doesn't excuse what she did, but it brought more of a this is why this was an idea.
Understanding.
For her to
You
do.
understood where she came from, and
Yes.
so it gives you a
right,
little more.
Understanding. Even though the anger is still there, and I think the anger bubbles still, even in portraying her as a character, because yes, I get it. This is where you came from. This is your background, and you were scared. And I absolutely get that. However, you took whatever you had, and you weighed that against ruining the lives of 9 men that you never met. That is horrible, regardless of it is horrible. And then being in the society and in the temper of what is happening in America right now, it's difficult. It is work to portray her. As one of the women in this cast of this wonderful majority men, outside of the actual show, crafting the show, I think we were the bosses. No. But yeah, it's a little difficult. It's difficult, but I think once I found the humanity of her,
I love that they played men.
Right.
I thought that was really fun.
yes.
To watch them do that.
And what do you have to do physically to do that? What do you have to think about?
To play men? Especially with my character, I was almost like I was just like a giant baby, like walking around the stage. But I think it was almost more difficult for me almost to play to have a mask on and to like relate to Ruby. I mean, it wasn't hard to relate to her personally, because she did try to do the right thing. Because essentially both Victoria and Ruby's background, like they grew up like in black communities. So it kind of made no sense like why they were blaming, black people for, about this horrible, horrible thing. And I think that relating to Ruby was easy because I of course, would hate it if something like that happened, and I would want to speak out if something like that happened. And the fact that she tried to do that, I really, love about her. Of course, at the beginning though, at the very, very beginning when they say like how everybody reacted and like Victoria like pointed out people and Ruby kind of was just quiet, like, why is this happening? Why are you doing this right now? But it's still like, that's still like her friend, I think, because we had probably grown up together.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like you had to follow whatever the leader was doing instead of really speaking out myself, like at first. But then like the fact that she gets this courage and comes in and tries to like tell her piece of it and tell the truth, like it was very easy to relate to her. But it was I think it was more just a mask thing though. You know, just having the mask on, like how you sit, and making sure that you're speaking, you know, through your body instead of through your facial expressions was very, very difficult for me because it's like I would make a face, and then I realized that no one could see my face. And I think even there's a few times like Mike said, you know, like, oh, we can't see your face. You gotta like do something else. I think that was actually more difficult than to become the male character. But I also was in a show before where I was by myself and I played 12 characters, and so I like just came off of playing a man. So I was like, oh no, I got this. I know. Exactly.
Yeah, for me, to become the boy was harder because I have a switch. I really do, and I accepted it. But I have a switch, and Mike was like, "So Katrina, that's good. The voice is great, but you can't switch." You know, so I had to study men. I would actually watch men in public and just watch like, oh, they sit like Eugene as the character was not as difficult because of his vulnerability. And during the research, Eugene was sexually assaulted by the prisoners and the guards. You know, he was like kind of passed around the prison. So that vulnerability, and he was mulatto. He was, you know, so the vulnerability of him, because so many times, you know, he was young, that's very, for lack of, I don't even know how to say it, very female, very feminine. And that's a cross that we bear as being that vulnerable, quote unquote, supposedly weak, you know, whatever. So that wasn't that difficult.
Can I ask, who came
Yeah, I
up,
was gonna open it up to questions.
who came up with the line, hey, there's white people out there? Because what that did for me as an audience member was kind of bring me into your conversation, again, with what's happening today.
That's
And
in the
I
script.
really think,
Hey, there's white people in the beginning when they're talking.
Yeah.
And somebody uses the N word, I believe.
yeah.
You know, I have a question with regard to the women and what they were speaking about right now. First of all, this is the second time I've seen this, and I brought my husband the second time because it was absolutely fabulous the first time. I became mesmerized by the masks. Pretty soon, everyone else disappeared. I just saw the mask. It was just fabulous. But with regard to the women, what you kind of alluded to the fact that they were afraid of the Mann Act, which is women were being brought across the state lines for prostitution. So they were afraid to be, they were afraid to be prosecuted themselves. So that's why they maybe were lying, just so they, you know, would be elude whatever prosecution they would face. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they had both done time already.
So they were afraid to
They had been
maybe
to a workhouse.
second time, not this nice time.
And I think Victoria dug in her heels.
Yes.
Because time passed with multiple trials, and I think there was a way for her to come forward if she had the conscience to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true, because that's what the sorry thing is, that you see that she doesn't have a conscience after 30 years, that she still is lying.
I'm curious, are you conscious of when you have a predominantly black audience as opposed to a predominantly white audience? Or
Yes, always. And this, I mean, it's a show. For me, this show as well as like the last show I did, it's very difficult to do a show with an all-white audience, especially with something with this content. You want to, but it weighs a little bit heavier, just because as an actor, I find myself I'm doing this vaudeville show. I'm performing for these people. You know what I mean? It's like, but I want to be performing this for these people. You know, so it's just really tricky because I was also in the Harry 8, and it's the same thing. It's like when you have this kind of content, you want to see your faces out there too. But you know, it's like, how do we get our faces in that house? And it's like because you not only because you it's just a very weird place to be because you know as far as our history as black performers in general, like doing this, especially vaudeville, was our way of breaking into entertainment. But we still were looked and viewed as second-class citizens. You know what I mean? And doing this in this period and still doing it in front of an all-white audience, it just puts you in a very weird limbo type of place. And it's like, has anything changed? Is it changing? What is changing? Like, how much has it changed in all this time? It's just, it affects you, and it affects me in a different way. And like, after every show, I have to like go home and just decompress, because it's just an extra weight that's there. You know what I mean?
Trumpism shows that nothing has changed.
Yeah, but I'd say that
evil is out there exactly the same way.
Right.
Exactly the same way.
But I was gonna say, you guys talked to us. I mean, it was like 10 black men talking to me. So that's really all I want to say about that. And that's the conversation we as a society need. So that's kind of it.
I think that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, building off what Breon was saying, is that I totally agree with that sort of that aspect of sort of being on display and then exerting this energy, the means of eliciting some sort of reaction from people, which is essentially what we do. But then having this sort of racial aspect within the show does sort of art imitating life imitating art. It sort of does sort of bring that to the surface. But then also the other thing that I find really interesting about the audiences is that you all obviously are such a living and breathing entity in and of yourselves that like depending on like the night that we have an audience that sort of delivers. And I had to figure this out early on, first go round of like, you get those audiences sometimes where it's really quiet. And at first it was sort of like, man, they're not into it. They don't like the show. And and having friends in the audience, friends who've seen the show multiple times, our wonderful understudies, Dion, Brian, and Becca's over there. But having them in the audience sometimes relay information to you, you start to realize it's like, no, like they were in it, like they were listening. Sometimes it's like it's that sort of, yes, we're on the ride with you, and sometimes it's that, and it's a lot to process. And the other thing that I find really interesting, and I don't know if it's happening more this time than it was last time, but it seems like as the show goes on, the weight of it sort of like it constantly, like scene by scene by scene, piece of the story by piece of the story, portion by portion, atrocity by atrocity. Every time it feels like by the end of the show, it's like it's hard to like, I don't know, it's hard to walk, it's hard to get it out. Like honestly, like it makes me a little bit teary-eyed right now just thinking about it. But it's like, Angela and I, we exit this way, and sometimes we just like, I'm getting emotional right now actually thinking about it. Sometimes we have like just like a moment over there where it's just sort of like it hits you in this way that is so palpable and so visceral and so upsetting, and it's just, I don't know, it's a really like surreal, like out of body experience sometimes. Like,
And kind of to bring it back to the question, I've had both supporters, white and black. And last night, one of my best friends, he's black, and he's like, I love the show, but I really want to like ask the white audience, do you really get it? You were laughing, but certain parts just weren't funny because it's happening right now. But then I would have my white friends, and they would come. They were like, it was very entertaining. And then I'm like, okay. I know that it's not, because I'm already so sensitive and so open, and I'm just there crying in the corner with Brandon, and I come in, I know that I have to understand not to take it personally. Either if the audience is quiet, if they are entertained, I have to walk away with something. Because again, there are a lot of African Americans who don't even know this story. And they are entertained as well, or they are intrigued to, so I believe, like someone said, we have to start the conversation. So now it has opened me up to even black or white to say, outside of the entertainment, what did you take away from it?
And sometimes the laughter is nervous laughter.
It is nervous laughter.
There's that as well.
Sperm. No, sperm isn't funny. Just
how I was supposed to respond. Because I didn't find most of it entertaining, in a comedy, whatever. But the other thing I wanted to say was Katrina, I mean, you got really like, to me, no disrespect to everybody else, because everybody was fabulous. You had the two hardest parts, to me, for all the reasons you talked about. And I just think it's interesting that the playwright did it that way.
I really love that part. But I mean, that the most hated, the villain, and the most vulnerable, in the sense of all vulnerable. But when you think about sexual abuse, that takes your humanity. That this the most personal part of you is not yours. Eugene had a cell daddy, and Eugene was not the only one who was sexually abused, by the way. Several of the Scottsboro boys were sexually abused because at one point they were all put in separate cells, so they were not around each other as much. So that to have that vulnerability, and then on the other hand be this fierce villain, horrible, I'm gonna lie to my grave. It was this dichotomy that just kind of, I loved how he put that together. Like, yeah. So thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, I think overall this, and to the question of the audience, and like you said, we can hear them because when we have a even half and half African American and Caucasian audience, there's some parts that we'll hear, and we'll hear, right, exactly. Or things that we like when they say, well, they didn't break you. There was one night, the last run, there was one night that they didn't break you. Tell it. And finally, the truth, they kind of think we're like, oh, us here tonight.
Different jokes, though. Different jokes culturally, that's the thing, because the way it expands through the different cultures react differently, and different cultures respond differently to different jokes, which is the other really wonderful thing.
And I would also add, and I could be wrong, but when there's an African American audience, there's different reactions by the different ages of the audience.
Absolutely.
I think that you have younger members react much more differently than
I never knew Danny Boy was funny. Why are they laughing all the time?
That's a complete opposite experience than Andrew when it comes to some of my Caucasian friends that have come. They actually do get it, and they talk, and they'll call me the next morning, still talking about it and what they learned. So that I am truly proud of. That it's not just entertainment to them; they're listening, and they are connecting about what's happening today. So
When did the last Scottsboro boy die? Or is somebody?
Hey, George Wallace was the one that
And the last party was Haywood in 2013.
Yes.
Haywood party in 2013, just 3 years ago, when the state of Alabama officially.
And there's also a couple boys, like, after the whole case is closed, you don't hear anything about it. There's nothing anywhere. It's almost like they just dropped off the face of the planet. Just Ozzy, like for me, Ozzy, after he gets let out, there's nothing about him at all. And you kind of have to just make up your own ending for the character too, which I personally did because I think Ozzy, after getting out and not having anyone to take care of him, because I think his family had already passed. Because especially when Haywood says, like, that's the last thing he says to his mom, made him think that she's gone. And he doesn't have anybody else to take care of him. And then he may not have, survived much longer after getting out, which is sad itself as well because he just spent all that time in jail to get out and to die, essentially. And it was just like.
Yeah, the ones that disappeared, there were no death records. There's nothing, like they literally just disappeared because you had those that wanted to get the story out and basically try to monopolize on that moment and like actually use it for something. But you have the other ones that were like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. Willie was one of them. Eugene was one of them. Like they just disappeared off the map, and they whether they changed their names or did whatever, no one knows. They just left, and because they just couldn't deal with it anymore. They just didn't. They just wanted to be people. They didn't want to be the Scottsboro boys.
I'm curious to know what are you reading next?
Sure.
doing You and the Moors now with the Hypocrites, and doing then Rutgers Travels.
What's Rutgers Travels about?
It's based on the book Middle Passage about Rutherford Calhoun, who is a fictional story. It's basically like, if you think of, it's basically like a black version of Moby Dick and Treasure Island. Because basically he was running away from things that were happening here because they tried to marry him off, and he was a free black man in America, and he was trying to run away from that stuck life, and then he boarded a ship to like go have adventures, but it turned out that the ship he boarded was actually part of the slave trade, and so but he still was free on the ship. He was never a slave himself, but he actually started to play a hand in what was going on in the slave trade. So it's really tricky. It's a really tricky story. And then choreographing for writers, Julia Caesar.
Any more questions?
I want to know if you had any liberty to stray from the holy text, because there seem to be lots of little bits.
Of course you straight. We take a walk. All the time.
The most obvious example of straying from the script is that in the script, the jury has no lines.
I
until
love
the-
that bit. That's exactly what
We have 2 lines of that.
But you know, when Mark Stein came to the show last year, I was very nervous he was going to see the play that he did not write. But he loved it, gave his full blessing, and
Well, it added a lot to the scene, though. I think too, just not just show the views of the lawyers, but
right there. Guys, I not knowing the background of how you found the script and everything, I sort of naively assumed until the end, when we have a few minutes, there is actually an offer, and I read, okay, so that was previous productions. I thought you would have built it here. So it felt so
one of the things we established early on was that we were going to break as many rules as we could. Just because following any kind of past guidelines would not have allowed us to discover the moments we discovered. Is that fair to say?
And you guys put the end together too, right? You guys put the end, putting the mask. That's not in the script.
The end is not in the script at all.
It is very rare that an entire cast returns to a remount, and has really 2 quite long runs for this so it's great.
I'm happy about that.
And if anybody out there has connections to other theaters, I was trying to tell Michael I really would love to see this play done in other parts of the country. Y'all be all there. I think there are some other places.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I can't thank you enough.
I'd like to make just one compliment to the cast. I think that because it was so small and every one of you had multiple characters, it allowed us to see the incredible talent that you all have.
Thank you. August 27th. We run until August 27th. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday matinee.